Okay, Erev Tov, Chodesh Tov. So, those who were here on the shiur this morning, we started talking about, we've got Purim coming up, as you all know, and Purim was Shulash, and it's very, very complicated. So I wanted to just repeat some of the things we mentioned this morning in the shiur, because so that people don't get confused, and not everybody was there. But as we know, this year we have a unique situation for Purim, what's called Purim Shulash, which is the last time it happened was not so long ago. The next time that it's going to happen is in more than a year. So that's enough time to forget until then and have to learn it again. But essentially, it's very, very interesting, very, very complicated, a very strange situation whereby Purim falls out on Shabbat. So some of the mitzvot are brought forward to Friday, some of the mitzvot are postponed to Sunday, some things still happen on Shabbat. And I asked this morning in the shiur, I said, where would you find this in the Shulchan Aruch? It's very, very complicated. There's a lot of laws here. You would expect at least an entire siman to be dedicated to this. No, I would think. So if you open up Hilchot Megillah, or the laws of Purim in Shulchan Aruch, the first siman is Tav Reish Pei Vav is Din Tanit Esther. Okay, we'll get to that. We'll deal with that before Tanit Esther. The second siman is Chiyuv Kriyat Megillah, which is 2 sifim. The third siman is a really very, very obscure, was not really practically relevant for a lot of Jewish history, which is siman Tav Reish Pei Chet Din Krachim Amukafim Choma Mimot Yoshua bin Nun. All the laws of where is what's considered a city that was a walled city from the days of Yoshua bin Nun, and what's not, and Paruz, and Mukaf, and Ben Yomon. Somebody asked me very, very complicated questions that come up, particularly this year. If somebody starts off on Yudalid, is in Jerusalem, which is a walled city, and then for Tetvav they go to a non-walled city, or vice versa, and it depends on where you started off, and where you live, and where you plan to go, and where you ended up going. All very, very complicated halachot. But within that, we have one short seif, just one seif. And you could even miss it, because I said this entire siman was not very relevant for most of our history. We know that we have Purim, which is Yud Daled, which every city in the world, with the exception of Yerushalayim, celebrates Purim on Yud Daled. But Yerushalayim has Shushan Purim, that's the next day, and therefore it's only in Shushan Purim that we can have this situation of Purim Mishulash. So let's go through the Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Berurah, what he says about it. He says the following. It says the Shulchan Aruch, says Yom Tetvav Shechal Liot b'Shabbat, okay, which is the case this year, as we mentioned. Why does he not mention if Yud Daled falls out on Shabbat? Because in our fixed calendar, Yud Daled cannot fall out on Shabbat. The Mishnah Berurah points this out. He says Yom Tetvav Ilu Yud Daled Efshar Lachol b'Shabbat. By the way, you have to be careful which siddur you use on Shabbat of Purim for this very reason, because we mentioned this morning, I'm sure we say Ala Nisim on Purim on Tetvav, which is Shabbat. The only part of Purim really that's left that we don't bring forward of the mitzvot, we don't bring forward to Friday, we don't postpone to Sunday, is that we say Ala Nisim in Tefillah, we say Ala Nisim in Birkat Hamazon. So if you look in some of the siddurim, you'll see that when you go through the Amidah of Shabbat, and it has the section for Ala Nisim, it has the section for Ala Nisim for Chanukah, but it doesn't have the section of Ala Nisim for Purim. The reason is because if you live outside of Yerushalayim, if you live outside of Eretz Yisrael, you would never have a situation where we have to say Ala Nisim on Shabbat for Purim, because you've done it can't fall on Purim. But in this shul we use the Rinat Yisrael, and in the Rinat Yisrael we have the Ala Nisim for Purim as well, and Shabbat. Don't worry. But there are certain other siddurim. Person should be careful before which siddur you use for the Shabbat, because it may not be there. Okay. So it says the Shulchan Aruch Yom Tetvav Shechal Liot b'Shabbat. It says, Ein korina Megillah b'Shabbat, ela makdimim likrota be'erev Shabbat. So we don't read the Megillah on Shabbat, but rather we bring it forward to Erev Shabbat. Okay, we discussed last week and this morning, we discussed what are the reasons why we don't read the Megillah on Shabbat. I won't repeat them for now. We'll just say the Mishnah Berurah. So he says, Ein korin, tegazru Rabbanan shema yelech etzel chacham lamda ech likrota v'yavren 400 reshut rabim. Right, that's the reason he brings, that you might end up carrying the Megillah through reshut rabim. Somebody asked me the question this morning, why is it that we don't have this gzeira stam for Kriyat Torah? Right, we say you can't read the Megillah on Shabbat, because for Haftarah for that matter. You can't read the Megillah on Shabbat because you might go and carry it to learn how to read. So why don't we say we read every Shabbat, we read from a Megillah, right? Not Megillah in that sense, but we read from Megillah for the Haftarah, from the Navi. Why don't we say And that was an institution which is Drabanan. Why don't we say that on Shabbat we're worried that a person will go and they'll take the Megillah of the Navi to go and to learn how to read the Haftarah. Right? We don't find that. So we gave one explanation. We mentioned last week how Chachamim were only concerned for these matters when Shabbat and Yom Tov are mixed in together. That you're thinking about Yom Tov, you might forget about Shabbat, or vice versa. Okay, but anyway, so we don't read the Megillah on Shabbat. Next, says the Shulchan Aruch, "V'govim ma'ot matanat aniyim mechalkim otam bo b'yom." Right, matanot le'evyonim, as we said, is associated with the Megillah. So it's on the same day that we read the Megillah. That is the day in which we allocate the matanot le'evyonim as well. Ubayom Shabbat motzim shnei sfarim, uvasheni korin vayavo Amalek. Okay, so on that Shabbat we bring out 2 Sifrei Torah. In the second one we read vayavo Amalek. That's the maftir. It's the maftir for Purim, or the maftir for that Shabbat, which is the Kriya of Purim. V'omrim al hanisim ve'ein osim seudat Purim ad yom echad b'Shabbat. That's the Shulchan Aruch. He doesn't mention anything about Mishloach Manot, but he just says we read from the 2 Sifrei Torah. We say al hanisim, as we've already mentioned. Ve'ein osim seudat Purim ad yom echad b'Shabbat. And that's how the Shulchan Aruch paskins. We don't do the Suda until Sunday. This is another opportunity to remind everybody to sign up for the Sudat Purim, which is on Sunday. Says the Mishnah Berurah, he says, Omrim al hanisim, HaMegillah b'Shabbat. So he says, V'az Yom HaShabbat Shmone Chet Le'adar U'Parshat Zachor. Right, so the previous Shabbat, which was this coming Shabbat now, that will be Parshat Zachor. U'Maftirin Pakati. V'gam b'Tetvav Le'adar Maftirin Pakati. So we have the same Haftarah for Shabbat Zachor and for the week of Purim in Yerushalayim. We read the same Haftarah twice. ושואלים ודורשים בו ביום בהלכות פורים כדי שיזכרו עניין היום וכשחל בחול יוצאים על ידי קריאת מגילה. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, something we mentioned this morning as well, that there's a halakha of shoalim v'dorshin, that we learn the halachot of the inyanim of Purim. We have to discuss those on the day of Purim. Normally, we fulfill that obligation by reading the Megillah. But since we're reading the Megillah the day before, we have to hear a drasha instead. Okay, and then he says, Omrim al hanisim b'Shabbat v'lo be'erev Shabbat. Right, we say al hanisim on Shabbat. You might have thought that Erev Shabbat, that's the day when we read the Megillah, that's the day you say al hanisim, but we don't do that. Okay, and then he says ve'ein osin, that we said we don't do the Seudah on Shabbat. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Amrinam b'Yerushalmi v'yasu otam b'Shabbat, amar la'yemei mishtei ktiv, et shesimchato tluya b'beitin, yatsa zeh Shabbat, shesimchato b'idei shamayim. We read the Megillah on Friday. You don't read it on Friday? So we don't say al hanisim on Friday. Again, on Friday we read the Megillah. On Shabbat we say al hanisim. It's all very, very strange because normally we say al hanisim, it's part of Pesach Manes. We do that when we do all the mitzvot of Purim, but that's exactly the point of Purim Mishulash. Everything is split up. So what's the there's no chiyuv to say twice. The Chazal established that we say al hanisim on the day of Purim. So the day of Purim is Tetvav. But for external consideration, so really by rights, as we mentioned this morning, by rights we should have had all the other mitzvot on the day of Purim as well, but we can't because the Megillah we can't carry, and the Aniyim that goes with the Megillah, and the Mishloach Manot goes with the Seudah of Purim we don't want to be on Shabbat. So all the mitzvot get pushed off in one way or the other, but Shabbat is still Purim. And what's the expression of the fact that it's still Purim? That is by the fact that we say al hanisim. Correct. On Thursday night and Friday morning, we read the Megillah. Right? On Friday, we give the Matanot Le'Evyonim as well. On Shabbat, we say al hanisim, and we have the Kriyat Torah. And then on Sunday, we have the Seudah and the Mishloach Manot. Sunday Esther is Thursday, right? So this is the other thing I mentioned this morning as well, which is unusual this year for Yerushalayim, which is that normally the halakha is that you fast on Tanit Esther. Again, those who fast, somebody who's unwell, somebody who's Tanit Esther is really the lightest of all, the most lenient of all the fasts. So somebody who's unwell, somebody whose health does not allow it, should not, and we don't have to get to the stage of Pikuach Nefesh. It's not like Yom Kippur, but somebody who's unwell does not have to fast on Tanit Esther. But one who's healthy enough would fast, and then you would only, generally speaking, break your fast after the Megillah. And that's how it is outside of Yerushalayim. That's how it is every year. So people are used to the fact that they're fasting until they've finished hearing the Megillah, and only then they eat. But in Yerushalayim, we're not used to this because most years we break the fast when we daven Maariv on the day, and then we only read the Megillah the next night. So therefore, if people are going to find it very difficult, you're not used to coming in to hear the Megillah on an empty stomach. Right? So you're going to find it very difficult to concentrate, and you might fall asleep while you're hearing the Megillah because you haven't eaten, you haven't had anything to drink. I remember many years ago when it was Purim Mishulash and I was in Yeshiva, and I remember that I was in Yeshivat HaKotel, and the Rosh Yeshiva said before we daven Maariv, and just before the Kriyat Megillah, he got up and he said, everybody go downstairs, have some water, have something to drink. He said, "Yesh l'shot me'asanhedrin." That was in the Purim atmosphere. That was what he said. But so one would be allowed to, if one needs to, one is allowed to break the fast, obviously after nightfall, before hearing the Megillah, drinking some water, having something small to eat. Again, you shouldn't open up a whole table and have a whole meal. There's not time for that either. But just to break the fast in that way, that would be permitted. Like I say, especially because we're not used to it.
It's also he was fasting.
Yeah.
So therefore, we should also listen to the Gillah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So the halacha is that generally speaking, we say one shouldn't break the fast until after the Megillah. But it's brought down if it's going to be difficult. If it's going to be very, very difficult for somebody, especially you're not going to be able to concentrate. You're going to fall asleep. If you fall asleep for part of the Megillah, you haven't fulfilled anything. You have to go and hear the whole thing over again. So if a person's in that situation, then one wants to drink some water, wants to break the fast, that would be permitted. But as a course of action, we're not going to go and ask everybody to go and eat. That's okay. Rabbi Hanania ben Akash, Amar Tzakadosh Baruch Hu lezakot Yisrael, lifrach b'alem tov mitzvot, shnei madrech v'tzman zilko, yagdil Torah v'yadlim.